What is up, guys? Taiki here. Today I wanted to discuss the Arbitrum token airdrop and my expectations for the ARB token, the valuation, and the effects on the Arbitrum altcoin ecosystem. So I received 22,125 tokens across 6 different wallets. So I hope it does really well. But I'll talk about why I have more muted expectations for the ARB token ecosystem than I think a lot of other people, and I'll give my reasons why. So this is clearly a nice win, right? If you're on chain, if you're in DeFi, I'm sure you got the Arbitrum token airdrop. All you had to do was buy GMX, LP for GLP, maybe airdrop farm on other protocols, and a couple $1,000s. Yeah, it definitely pays to not be lazy, bridge across different wallets, and just use DeFi, right? If you're watching this video, chances are you care about DeFi. But that's obviously great. But I'll also talk about some of the L's I've been taking. So I've kind of been getting punched in the face recently. Also, I'll talk about how the USDC Depeg affected my psychology, my portfolio, and why I acted in a way that I guess you can call capitulation and tilt. And then I'll lastly talk about ETHBTC, the Bitcoin dominance, etc., and my expectations for that ratio moving forward. So none of this financial advice. These are my thoughts as of the 22nd of March. So my thoughts can change tomorrow, for example. But let's get started. So the Arbitrum token airdrop, there's multiple ways to think about this. People have been doing some napkin math on, comparing the FDV of OP. And if it's the same FDV, then maybe Arbitrum is trading at roughly $1. But then this isn't that great because everyone knows that Arbitrum is a much better ecosystem than the Optimism token. So if you adjust for TVL, maybe you can justify $1.24. This isn't a bad way to do it, and the number itself, 174, seems reasonable. But you really should not use TVL to calculate these things for several reasons. First of all, it's not fair because part of the Optimism TVL is denominated in the OP token. So obviously, if the Arbitrum token drops, then Arbitrum TVL is going to go higher. And also, OP has also incentivized TVL with OP liquidity mining incentives through the public grants program. So if Arbitrum also does liquidity mining, then TVL should, go much higher. So, this is roughly where it's at. Arbitrum is roughly 2x out of OP. And then people will say, Arbitrum should be worth twice as much as OP. But also if Arbitrum drops, then maybe Arbitrum TVL gets 4 billion, and then people will say, oh, Arbitrum should be worth 4x that of OP. Maybe. But I also don't even think it's that unreasonable. And I think it's good to have muted expectations for the entire ecosystem, and I'll give my thoughts on why I think that is. So let's first talk about the tokenomics, I guess. A lot of it goes to insiders and whatnot, but I don't think it really matters. I think it's going to be a widely anticipated token. 12% of the tokens goes to the users of the Arbitrum platform, which is great, right? Hopefully you have some, and 1% goes to the DAOs. So for the sake of simplicity, let's just overestimate the circulating market cap and the circulating supply of the Arbitrum token, just so that we can have more, a realistic expectation. So let's just say that 1.3 billion tokens are going to be in circulating supply. Of course, it's overestimating it, right? Because it's going to be close to 1.23, 1.275. But just for the sake of simplicity. So if it trades at $1, then 1.3 billion circulating, 10 billion FDV, $3, 3.9 billion circulating, 30 billion FDV. So let's kind of take these assumptions and move forward. Because for short-term price action, I don't think the valuation matters too much. It's more going to be determined by the psychology of the marginal seller and the marginal buyer. So I'm going to be focusing this video on that. Of course, on the longer term, you can make any justification for the valuation. If you look at these OTC desks, 0x Kongi, these OTC desks aren't that reliable because it's very illiquid, but according to 0x Kongi, it's trading at roughly $1.35 to $1.40 as of yesterday. And also 0x Cole, who I've had on my channel before, he's been buying the airdrop OTC, and he mentioned that 2 days ago it was selling at roughly $1. Yesterday it was going for $1.20, $1.35, and if people are, if that's where the OTC desk is trading at, then maybe it's fair to assume that it might launch roughly $1.50. And then of course with crypto, there's always short-term euphoria. People are gonna lever long to the tits. It can go to $3, but if it gets to $3, I'm gonna be just dumping it all, right? So I'll talk about why I think that is. So there's that. And in terms of circulating market cap, circulating market cap is kind of hard because you also have to take into account FDV. But I do expect Arbitrum to eventually be worth more than like Chronos, Hedera, Quant, Aptos, Stellar, Filecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Monero, OKB, ETC. Yeah, I mean, it should trade above these things, right? And these are trading at $2 to $3 billion circulating. But if you think about the FDV, because people say FDV is a meme, but it does matter. If Arbitrum is trading at like a $30 billion FDV, then it's going to bring in sellers, right? I do think Arbitrum should be a top 10 coin in terms of FDV. I think it should trade above that of Cardano. I mean, Arbitrum without a token has more on-chain activity than that of Aptos, Solana, Avalanche, Polygon, OP, Filecoin, Toncoin. I mean, what are these evaluations, right? So in the longer term, right, let's say in like a month or two, I do expect Arbitrum to be $1.50 at least. But in the short term, right, like all kinds of crazy things can happen. I'm not going to be a seller of ARB below $1.50, I believe. But above $2, $3, I think I'm going to start to scale out. Yeah, longer term bullish. But I think if you're watching this video, I don't really think people care like my price prediction for Arbitrum in like 6, 12, 18 months. I think more people are more concerned about, like, should I buy, should I sell, like what should I do with my Arbitrum altcoins, should I be degen farming? So this video is gonna be more focused on like, let's say like the next couple of weeks and my expectations for the Arbitrum ecosystem, and like I guess like the next couple of months as well, because like I mentioned earlier, in the short term the price is determined by marginal buyers and sellers. So I think it's more relevant to think about the marginal buyer's psychology, because I mean 12% of the supply gets airdropped, right? So we have all these potential sellers, because for me, I get this Arbitrum token, like what can I do with it? I can either hold it or sell it. Okay, so there's a bunch of people that are going to be looking and thinking about when do I sell. And in order for prices to go higher, there has to be a bunch of buyers to step in, right? So the crypto people that only trade on centralized exchanges, don't use on-chain stuff, right? Like they feel like they missed out, they want to make money, right? They might buy the Arbitrum token on Binance or something. Like, what's their psychology like, and how it affects my plan? So these marginal buyers, you have to think about like their motives, their profit motives, because obviously if they buy it at like $2, for example, they're looking to make money on it. And I mean, let's just like think about like where they are. If I buy Arbitrum at $2, I needed to get to $40 billion FDV for me to 2x. It's possible, right? $4 Arbitrum, but it kind of seems risky, right? But you can also argue that, hey, like from $2 to $3, that's a 50% gain. But that also seems kind of risky, right? So can we really expect that many buyers above 2, even 3? Maybe not, because at $3, it has to go to a $60 billion FDV for it to 2x. I mean, I don't think it's that likely. Can I get there in like 12 months? I mean, yeah, but if it's at $3, you also have to think about, okay, like for me, I have 22,000 Arbitrum tokens. If that's like $66,000, like I'd rather hold $66,000 worth of Ether than Arbitrum at that point, because I think the risk reward of Ether at that point is much better than like whatever the Arbitrum token is trading at. I don't think it's going to trade below $1. I mean, it can, depending on like what happens with FOMC, but I think there's going to be a bunch of buyers at roughly $1. I think $1 is a good meme number, right? It's a round number. People think it's like cheap, and also $1 is like roughly where the OP FDV is, and I think everyone knows that Arbitrum should be worth more. So there's gonna be a bunch of buyers there. Below $2, I don't think I'm gonna sell. I mean, it kind of depends on like how the markets look, but I'm gonna be looking to scale out of Arbitrum at $2 and just sell on the way up. And by $3, I'll probably be all out. But I don't really expect it to get to $3. If it does, great. But I'll be out of my bags long before then. And I'll probably rotate my profits into either Trickle-down GLP or maybe spot Bitcoin, or even FXS, which I'll talk about later. And then like the follow-up question is like, hey, it's like Tiggy, like Farmer Tiggy, like what are you farming on Arbitrum? What are your expectations for the Arbitrum ecosystem? Like, are things gonna pump? Like, are there gonna be like trickle-down effects of, because people have been saying, like, there's like this narrative that, there's going to be like $1 billion liquidity injection on chain, and people are going to sell their Arbitrum, and then they're going to buy a bunch of Arbitrum shitcoins, and then everything is going to go up, and we're going to make a bunch of money, right? Like, we're all going to be rich, mint a bunch of millionaires. But I mean that's definitely the narrative. But I think the Arbitrum altcoin season is already happening. So I think people that maybe didn't get the airdrop, maybe they feel FOMO, they bought like some Arbitrum shitcoins, and I think there's a higher chance that tomorrow is going to be a sell the news event for these Arbitrum altcoins than expecting like some random follow-through pump. In my experience, like these ecosystem altcoins that don't really have strong fundamentals, they can't really have sustained pumps unless there are like outside incentives. And I don't really expect Arbitrum to do liquidity mining in the short term. They did mention on Twitter that they're going to have a DAO grant program, but it's going to have to be voted on, right? Someone's going to have to make the proposal. To be honest, it might take like a month or two. And if there's anything we know about DAOs, they move very slowly. And you can say, hey, like maybe what if ARB does, I don't know, like liquidity mining, like enable it as collateral, have people lever it up to the tits. But also for like GMX ARB integrations, there has to be Chainlink oracles for the ARB token, and that's going to take some time to integrate as well. So I think there's a chance that people get super hyped about it, and maybe Arbitrum token sucks liquidity out of the altcoin market, like the Arbitrum altcoin market. And then as people realize that, oh wait, like, I mean, people made money, but it's not really trickling down, the trickle-down Ponzunomics that people are expecting, it's not really happening. And then maybe like the Arbitrum ecosystem is gonna just wither away slowly. And then maybe sometime in Q2, the DAO figures out some grant program, maybe 10% of the treasury goes to liquidity mining. And then maybe by May or June, we can kind of have just another pump, a more sustained pump. And maybe by that point, there's gonna be like more exciting projects at launch that can actually have sustained pumps. Because aside from GMX and GNS, I don't really care too much about all these altcoins. It's just, I mean, people like just use these altcoins as a way to like trade short term. Like no one's really like holding like some of these altcoins for like the longer term, in my opinion, or at least most people. So there's nothing wrong with this idea of like holding it for the longer term, right? People have talked about, okay, like anyone that sold the Uniswap airdrop, was really sad. Anyone sold the OB airdrop was sad. So like, there's merits to like holding Arbitrum for like the next 2 years. I mean, for sure. But I think for the sake of our mental health, right? I think it's like worth just taking profits, realizing some gains, rotating it into stablecoins, Ether, whatever. And I think it's reasonable to have muted expectations for the Arbitrum altcoin market. And we're already kind of seeing like sell the news across the board because it pumped a lot recently, and now everything's kind of like dumping. I kind of expect this to continue tomorrow. I think some people are going to rotate their altcoin profits into Arbitrum if they want to. But also, right, like for me, like, I get this Arbitrum token. Am I going to sell and then like punt into shitcoins? Definitely not, right? Like I'm more considering this as like, oh, like cool, I get more Ether, I get more Bitcoin, I get more crypto, and I really have no plans on like aping into like all these like random like inflationary shitcoins. I think everyone knows how the game is played at this point. I think everyone understands that these are short-term pumps that are not sustainable. People are trying to buy high, sell higher. If you have an edge playing those games, so be it, right? Feel free to do so. But for me, like I'm really bad at like super short-term stuff, so I'm just gonna view it as like a free stimulus check. But if you do want to hold your Arbitrum token for the longer term, maybe what you can do is stake or lock up your ARB with the Plutus DAO, because they're going to incentivize people to lock up their Arbitrum with Plutus, and there is going to be so you can lock up your ARB with them and receive both Plutus and ARB. So if you have a longer term approach, maybe you can lock up your tokens with them. But also like Plutus, they're trying to be the convex of Arbitrum, but like they have VE DPX, VE SPA, I guess ARB, and VE Jones, but like there's like no bribe market. So maybe in like 6 months there can be some bribe economy, but I don't really see it. But who knows? Like maybe I'm a battle scarred DeFi veteran that is too boomer. Maybe you can call me like Grandpa Taiki, right? It's like Taiki doesn't want to buy altcoins anymore. Like what a boomer, right? It's like Taiki's missing out on these Plutus pumps. Like what a boomer. But also like if I'm receiving this Arbitrum token airdrop, it's like why would I go out the risk curve, buy more Arbitrum altcoins? Because if Arbitrum does well, sure, these altcoins can keep pumping, but like I receive a bunch of money anyways. And if Arbitrum dumps, then if I bought these altcoins, I would have gone turbo wrecked, right? Double wrecked, or maybe like double wrecked. So yeah, I don't really see this trickle down Ponzunomics effect happening, creating this Arbitrum altcoin season. I guess like one analogy is like the LYRA airdrop. I farmed the LYRA airdrop. I made like $8,000. I kind of expected some of the money to trickle down into NFTs, But if you've been tracking the NFT market, it's an absolute shit show, right? Like people are farming on Blur, Machi Big Brother is getting dumped on, airdrop farmers are being dumped on, and floors are nuking. Which I think is fine, right? I mean, I don't think Blur is bad for the NFT market, but I think airdrop farming Blur is like not that great at this point. But if you look at Blur, people were saying that, hey, like NFT season. I mean, even I said that. I kind of expected NFTs to do well, but it really hasn't, and I'm like left holding the bag on some NFTs and some like tokens. Kind of expect the same, right? Maybe some hype in the next week, but I think most people that get this drop, they'd rather hold Ether or USDC or Tether than like, I don't know, like some random altcoin. Of course, like Plutus DAO, right? If they incentivize TVL, then maybe that can outperform. But I don't really think it's going to be that sustainable, to be honest. There's also like this spreadsheet that people have been sharing, right? Because some of these DAOs got this Arbitrum token airdrop, and then people are like doing this mental gymnastics of, like the Arbitrum airdrop token to market cap ratio. It's like, oh, Vesta has a market cap of 10 million, but they received like $5 million with the Arbitrum token. It's like, oh, super cheap, right? But to be honest, like how are these DAOs going to distribute these tokens? Like it's not even guaranteed that if you buy the Vesta token, you're going to get the Arbitrum token. I think it's more of a narrative for people to like buy these tokens to try to sell higher. So just be careful with these narratives. I think the best way to be allocated into the Arbitrum token, Arbitrum ecosystem, is GMX, GNS, and just the Arbitrum token. Anything else is, I don't know, like I'm not that excited about. But I will talk about projects that could launch in Arbitrum that I'm more excited about in, like, let's say Q2. There could also be a case that like older projects benefit more than newer projects, which is usually not the case. Usually like newer tokens pump more because it's like a new token and whatnot. But older projects received more of the token, like the airdrop token, and it has like less inflation because most of the tokens are already circulating. So maybe incumbent tokens will do better. But I still think that looking into new tokens also makes sense. Cool. So let's talk about some Arbitrum Alt plays in the future. So some of these tokens are not live yet. Some are, but basically like, like I'm not excited about like any of these, to be honest. But I am excited about something like options. I still think options is going to be a narrative that's going to be strong sometime in 2023. It hasn't gotten that much adoption because, to be honest, like there's not that much demand to trade options on chain. There's not that much demand to LP options on chain. But I do think that anyone that figures it out is going to be a multi-billion-dollar market cap token, similar to how I expect GMX to be a multi-billion-dollar market cap token in the coming years. So IVX is a token that's going to launch soon. To be honest, I have no idea. I talked to the team. I don't really know who they are, but they're trying to build an options AMM on Arbitrum, and they're going to hedge the delta exposure by longing and shorting on top of GMX. So this is like another vote of confidence for GLP and GMX, right? Because all these option protocols, they're trying to build on top of GMX. So GMX is probably like the best index exposure within the ecosystem. But I'm kind of excited about this one, so keep an eye on it. I think PREMIA is also interesting. They did a V3 demo on YouTube. They're also like an options AMM. To be honest, I'm kind of like this on-chain AMM maxi. You can create like Blur, which is like stores data off-chain. You can create things like Avo and Ribbon, which is kind of like this L2 roll-up on top of Ethereum that onboards market makers. I'll share, I'm not going to read through this, but I'll share this in the description below if you care about the investment thesis for Ribbon and Avo. Basically, Avo is kind of like the DYDX of options, where it's going to be super centralized, but they're going to have professional market makers, so it's probably going to make for a better experience. I'll provide this in the description below. I'll talk about feel free to give Chili a follow. He might be my intern. I'm like looking to build a team, so I'll talk about that later. There's PREMIA, there's LYRA, which is on Optimism and Arbitrum. They also use GMX to hedge. Metrics are kind of going up, but if you go to the Optimism side, right, it's like what the hell is this? And then there's Hedgic, which is another options AMM. Right now it kind of feels like it's too early to get into options, and maybe Ribbon's like the best way to play it. But kind of seems too early. But also, right, I think like a year or two from now, I think it's going to be a no-brainer that, if you can get into like a new options on-chain protocol, whatever, that makes sense for both LPs and traders, it's probably going to be like 10, 20, 30x opportunity. So still keeping an eye on it. I don't think there's like that many opportunities right now, but there's that. I think another thing that people should consider is a Uniswap v3 fork. So for those that are unaware, Uniswap v3, they had this license where I think when they launched in like May of 2021, they created this license where they said, okay, like for the next 2 years, no one can fork our code. And if you fork our code for v3, we can take legal action against you. Okay, because if you remember back in 2020, 2021, SushiSwap did a vampire attack on Uniswap by just introducing token incentives, and then that kind of forced Uniswap to drop a token of their own. So the thesis is maybe when the license expires, we're going to start to see a bunch of v3 forks, like Uniswap v3 forks launch that can introduce revenue share, okay, because Uniswap does not have revenue share, and maybe these v3 forks can just put a token on top of it, incentivize liquidity, and hopefully vampire attack Uniswap v3 that way. I have mixed feelings about this, right? Because right now, like v3, like Uniswap doesn't have a fee share, right? So LPs make more of the money. So if a new protocol forks v3 and then introduces revenue share, then like naturally it's less competitive with like LPing on Uni v3, right? If you also take into account like the risks involved to deploying capital on a new AMM, but maybe, right, like this new protocol can introduce revenue share and then make up for the lost fees by like printing a new inflationary token. It could be a strong narrative, to be honest. I don't think people talk about this too much. I mean, obviously we can have to wait until the license expires for these protocols to happen, and there is Trader Joe, which is something I'm a fan of. I do not own any, but they have this thing called the liquidity book, and maybe you can argue that this is a head and shoulders pattern, it's spacing out. They're also on Avalanche, Arbitrum, and Binance Smart Chain. And people that LP seem to make a bunch of money, and they could have revenue share as well. So maybe this is like the best way to bet on that. But who knows? Like maybe a new token that introduces revenue share once this license expires could be something that launches right on Arbitrum that can vampire attack a bunch of TVL, right? Like, let's say someone forks like the UI, UX of Uniswap and just like has revenue share with a bunch of inflation tokens. Surely it can accrue some TVL. So that's more things I'm excited for, right? Things that aren't live yet, that aren't really pumping, I guess, instead of like these things that are like kind of like being dumped on at this point. That's kind of like what I'm looking at. There's also, this trend towards people airdrop farming zkSync and Starkware. You can kind of see like the volumes for these bridges go up, especially after people realize that, oh wow, the Arbitrum token, anyone that farmed the airdrop made a bunch of money. But I mean, I bridged to zkSync like in 2020, 2021. I mean, there's nothing to do there, to be honest. The chain sucks at this point. Starkware is even worse. I mean, I bridged across multiple wallets. Like the chain literally sucks, right? So I think this is going to be more of like a 2024 story. I think it's better to just wait until an ecosystem develops across these chains, and then once there's like applications that you can actually use, like use it, right? Like don't force yourself to like bridge onto these chains, because I mean, like you're not gonna have any fun. For me, like I got a bunch of the Arbitrum token airdrop because I mean, I farm on Arbitrum, right? I love GMX. I airdropped farm Shell Protocol and like other like random projects, and naturally, right? I didn't even try. I just got a bunch of tokens. So I think that's like a better way to think about it, because if you try to like farm it too much, farm it too hard, like you're gonna get wrecked on slippage, get wrecked on fees, and you're gonna have a bunch of capital spread across different wallets. I can provide a link to the bridge in the description below. But I mean, there's nothing to do, right? In Starkware, like you have to download this new wallet called Argent. I tried doing a couple swaps on this thing called Jedi Swap. Not fun, right? Like my transactions failed multiple times. So cool. Okay, so Arbitrum token, those are my thoughts. So let's talk about what I did during the USDC Depeg and how I personally capitulated and why I capitulated and my thinking process. I guess it's kind of an excuse and maybe it's cope, but I do think it, I have to explain like why so you can kind of understand it, and then also, how it affected me, and I think how it affects on-chain and I guess the DeFi market, because I think that's more relevant than like whatever happened to me. But I do like sharing my experiences because, I'm human, I make mistakes, I have emotions. I try to make rational decisions, but sometimes, it gets to me. So, March 10th, March 11th, it depegged to 88 cents. It's now back to Depeg, and it's like, USDC, I should have bought the dip. Oh, like I bought USDC dip, I made so much money. Ooh, yeah. And I mean, yeah, like for sure, right? But I posted this in the Discord on the 11th, and basically I was like, TLDR, I sold like roughly a third of my USDC at 97.5 ish, and I also capitulated my FXS. And feel free, I'm not gonna read through this, but feel free to pause it. But I kind of had to de-risk, and I'll kind of share my reasons why. So, given the work I do, right? So I sell research, I make these videos, and I feel like, it's hard for me to make good content for my subscribers if, for example, I have like 10% of my net worth on chain, right? It's really easy for someone with like barely any money in crypto to just say, buying the USDC dip, right? But they also don't have that much skin in the game. Like I literally have, like the promise I made for my subscribers is like, I'm always gonna have more than like half my liquid net worth on chain, just because like, that way I can empathize with anyone that has a bunch of money on chain. I can kind of, like if I don't have skin in the game, then like how can I make good content? But also, right, like maybe this is like too aggressive, and maybe I have to like change this in the future because it also takes a toll on my mental health because a lot of my tokens, like I think like the market started nuking on Wednesday, and I actually like took profits on Wednesday, right? Because the markets look kind of bad, and I sold some things into USDC, and I'm like, okay, I'm de-risked, my sleep-adjusted returns at all-time highs, cool. And then USDC started depegging, and when you have over half your net worth on chain, and all your stable coins are in USDC, and it starts going to the 90 cents, it's not good for mental health, right? Let me tell you that, right? Like I was not having fun, definitely not for sure. And like what I ended up doing is like, I think I have it here. Okay, I don't have it here, but I basically had to sell my FXS, roughly at $7. It felt like capitulation. I'm not happy about it, right? Like when I did it, I sold it into Tether. I was really not happy about it. But the thing is, I felt like, when it comes to being on chain, having a bunch of wealth on chain, you just have to protect the worst case scenario. And I was fine taking a haircut on USDC, right? Like a third of my USDC into Tether. And also, right, like let's take the, because, USDC got back to Peg because the government stepped in, right? And bailed out Silicon Valley Bank. But and I also expected that to happen, but there was also like maybe like less than 5% chance that the government did not step in. And if the market's open on Monday and USDC was trading at like 94 cents, then like my portfolio would probably have gone turbo wrecked, right? Like really wrecked. And of course, if the markets are nuking, I want to buy altcoins or coins with my stable coins, but it also feels bad to like buy the dip on, let's say, Ether when USDC is at 94 cents. So I just like wanted to own more Tether basically. And you can kind of view it as Taiki capitulated and like what an idiot, but you can also view it as I am this on-chain maxi and I was a forced seller under the circumstances. You can view it as capitulation. I just wanted to live. I wanted to live to see another day, and I just like wanted to raise some Tether just so that hey, if something really bad happened, I wanted to buy the dip using Tether and not USDC. That's kind of my mentality. I know that I said FXS is like a longer term bet, which it is, right? And I might take my Arbitrum airdrop profits into FXS. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. But I just like wanted to de-risk. And basically like when the market started pumping, I'm like, oh my God, like what do I do? And I kind of FOMO bought GLP. If you ever want to guess like what Taiki's doing on any given period of time, he's probably like buying GLP to be honest. So I'll talk about GLP later as well. So definitely like not happy about it. And I think, it kind of like that weekend, like I wasn't like doing that well, like mentally, right? And I kind of felt like really isolated to some extent, because the thing about crypto, it's like, it's not really a sport, but it can get really lonely sometimes, right? And I act on my own, or like, I don't really have a team, right? I just like do everything by myself. And I think it was like the first time I realized that, like, oh my God, like I can't do this by myself, right? Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, how can I have half my net worth on chain and not have a team? So that's kind of the reason why I'm starting to hire people. I'm not taking any inbounds because I already have so many candidates, but I'm looking to build out a team. Maybe you can provide more value, I guess, to the content for the premium Discord and also the YouTube. But I wanted to have this section because how I felt in the past 10 days, it kind of reminded me like back to my poker days. And usually I'm like very, very hard on myself. And I have this video. So for background, before I got into full-time crypto, I was like full-time poker. And this is, I think, 2019, so like right before I went pro. And I went to a casino and I got turbo wrecked, right? I played bad, I lost a bunch of money, and I was fucking pissed, right? I was super pissed. And for some reason, 2019 Taiki thought that it would be a good idea to record himself on the drive home. So of course, none of this is financial advice, none of this is driving or financial advice, but I just like wanted to, share this video because, like this is like the emotions I feel, right? And I think it's kind of funny to like look back on this because, I think also like this is like how I felt this weekend. Everyone has emotions. Like, don't feel bad like taking a cut if you're on chain, right? It's like if you're on social media, everyone's gonna be like flexing how they bought USDC at 90 cents. But in reality, right, it's like it's okay to capitulate sometimes. It's okay to like take hits sometimes if it means that, hey, you're guaranteed to see another day. So let's put this into full screen and kind of play this. And yeah, so this is Poker Taiki, right? 2019. I lost a bunch of money and I was pissed recording myself on the drive home.
Today I played bad. I opened in spots that I shouldn't have opened in. Ace 10 off under the gun in a straddle pot. 2 limps to me at my straddle. With 8 deuce suited and I raised 55. And it worked, but obviously that's a losing play in the long term. And overall I played really bad. There's no buts about it. I called with 9s when I shouldn't have called. I bet like 4th pot when I should have checked. I should have just, folded in spots that it's obvious that he has a hand that's better than you. But I just called anyways because I'm tilted. But Taiki, tomorrow you're gonna, or not tomorrow, but from now on you're gonna play fucking good, okay? You're gonna play fucking good. I'm gonna play solid. That's it.
Yeah, so that's basically how I felt. I was like pretty pissed, right? I was like, oh my God, like what have I done? I feel so bad. It was like the most painful profit taking because I made profits with FXS, but I was like so pissed. I was like, oh my God, like why did I do that? But sometimes it's just good to just capitulate sometimes, get some sleep, and then, just approach the next week with a clean mind, recharge. And that's kind of where I'm at. So, hopefully, hopefully that made people laugh or something. Like some Schadenfreude, right? Like, having fun at, or taking joy in other people's displeasures. But let's talk more about, I guess, how this affects on chain. Because, you can definitely view like Taiki capitulating as Taiki being an idiot, but also you have to think about the ramifications and the consequences of the entire situation. Because if money is not flowing in to on-chain and most tokens are inflationary, it's just going to make it really, really hard for all these tokens to just have sustained pumps. And if you look at the market cap of USDC on the left, people are redeeming their USDC, okay? And of course, Tether market cap is going up, and that might be, there might be some offsetting numbers there. But as of a couple days ago, since March 10th, the USDC market cap has gone down by 7 billion, while the Tether market cap has gone up by only 5 billion. So it definitely seems like people are redeeming their USDC onto fiat. And it might just mean that people are putting it into Coinbase and then just converting into dollars and trading crypto on chain, and maybe there's not that much money leaving the ecosystem. But if you're more of an on-chain maxi like myself, you can't look at this data and be like, oh yeah, like on-chain is amazing, right? Like all these tokens are going to pump because all the whatever, right? And if you look at the 3 pool on Curve, I think this is also a good sentiment indicator about like on-chain confidence. So usually DAI, USDC, and Tether, there's like a 33% weighting, right? Because it's like equally balanced out. But it's been like this for the past 10 days. Like USDC and DAI has comprised of over 90% of the 3 pool, and it just shows you that, you know, people just feel less good about USDC right now. People are redeeming it into fiat, and anyone that's left on chain, you know, people are like people would rather hold Tether, and you know, you have to think about the ramifications of this. Maybe this just means that on average, maybe coins on a centralized exchange will do better than coins on chain, just because people just feel less good about being on chain right now, which is totally reasonable. Okay, like I did not feel good for like the past 10 days. I mean, of course, until like the market pumped, right? Like when the market pumped, I was like, oh, like this is why I'm in crypto, right? Like it's future finance. But you know, if you think about the psychology of the average person in crypto, I mean, I can definitely get the argument for like, you know, just not being on chain. Just put money on a centralized exchange, like trade crypto there. Maybe there's like less edge in being on chain aside from, I guess, like farming airdrops on Arbitrum or something. And also, despite crypto prices going higher, we kind of see this trend, right? So this represents like gas on Ethereum mainnet, and we saw like a spike when USDC depegged, and you know, the prices for Bitcoin and Ether are higher now than it was before the depeg. However, you kind of see that the on-chain activity is going down. So 17 Gwei is like the ultrasound line where, you know, if gas is above 17, then Ether is being burned and it's deflationary. But, you know, despite prices being higher, on-chain activity is weaker. So, you know, maybe this is not a vote of confidence for on-chain. Of course, right, if Bitcoin goes to 30K, if Ether goes to 2K, then yeah, people are going to come back. They're going to degen on-chain, of course. But in the short term, maybe this is like another reason why I'm more conservative when it comes to Arbitrum altcoins. It just feels like, you know, the market can only sustain like 1 or 2 narratives at once, just because there's like less money on chain and people feel less confident about being on chain, which I think is reasonable. Yeah, I think crypto natives are still relatively shook from the depeg, and maybe they just like they de-risk into a centralized exchange. But you know, like I don't really use centralized exchanges, so like I know like I'm tough at luck, I guess. Of course, retail are going to come back if prices go higher. But yeah, like maybe don't expect crazy pumps on chain, at least a sustained one. I could be wrong on that though. I'm more than happy to be wrong on this because I mean it's going to be good for me because I'm always on chain. So lastly, let's talk about the ETH-BTC ratio. Of course, with banks failing, Bitcoin dominance has gone up. Bitcoin's outperforming a bunch of altcoins, and people are calling for Bitcoin dominance to get to like 60%. So in ETH-BTC down, which I mean, yeah, I can definitely get behind. So I'm definitely like bullish Bitcoin. I mean, I entered crypto as a Bitcoin maxi, and times like this is when I'm reminded of like why Bitcoin was created in the first place. And if you look at the monthly chart of Bitcoin, I mean, you know, it's looking good, right? I mean, I talked about the echo bubble, right, in my last video, and it seems like it's playing out. And you know, you can kind of view this as like, despite all the things that's happened, Bitcoin is pumping. Okay, so like bull markets climb a wall of worry, and of course, near the bottom, right, in a bear market, you're always gonna find reasons not to buy. You're always gonna find reasons to sell. But of course, right, coming out of the bear into like the next sustainable bull market, there's always going to be reasons to be cautious. But I think, you know, given that there's so many uncertainties, it's just going to be good to have a longer term approach to these things. I still think in like 1 to 2 years, like these price points are going to be attractive. I've been saying all year that I think Tri-Crypto and GLP is going to outperform cash. And by cash, I mean 1-year treasuries. That's playing out. I still expect that to be the case. And I'd rather hold Tri-Crypto or GLP than cash, right? And, you know, there's the Fed coming up, right? I have no idea what's going to happen there. But yeah, I mean, there's short-term uncertainties, but, you know, medium to longer term, like how can you not be bullish crypto with everything that's happened? So just have a longer-term view. I think short-term trading is going to be really, really rough, especially when on-chain is kind of withering away. So just have a longer-term approach to these things, okay? And I guess one bull case for Bitcoin is, I guess, the analogy with gold. Of course, Bitcoin was created in 08-09 following the financial crisis, and that was when gold really did well, right? So from October of 08, it like went up 2x into 2011, which, I mean, it's only a 2x, but for an asset like gold, I mean, that's a pretty big, actually, no, it was not a 2x, it was like a 3x. That was a pretty big deal. And a lot of people view Bitcoin as digital gold. And if gold starts breaking out, starts putting in all-time highs, I can definitely see a scenario where like younger individuals, millennials, Zoomers, whatever, like why would they buy gold, right? Like, like might as well like buy digital gold, Bitcoin, because it can pump a lot harder, right? I can definitely see that narrative playing out. And gold is approaching its all-time highs at roughly $2,000. And, if gold is viewed as a flight to safety and Bitcoin is becoming more correlated to gold, that alone can be a narrative that can propel Bitcoin to higher prices. And of course, Bitcoin generally leads crypto out of a bear market. So that's naturally going to be good for Ether and altcoins as well. Maybe in the short term, maybe not so, right? Bitcoin dominance is going up. But, I think crypto is such a mature asset class that if Bitcoin goes up, I just think that the wealth is going to trickle into altcoins. Of course, with everything that's happened, the market is pricing in one or two more 25 basis point hikes. And of course, right, I mean, this can happen and whatnot, but I think what matters more, right, for crypto and whatnot is, first of all, like if Bitcoin can be more correlated with gold, I think that's very, very bullish. I think it's a sign that crypto is maturing as an asset class. But let's talk about DeFi, because this is more of a DeFi channel. Of course, one of the things I've been saying is that, stablecoin yields in DeFi cannot compete with the risk-free rate. Okay, like if someone can put dollars into like 1 month treasuries and earn 5%, then they should do that, right? And like, what's the point of putting it on chain? But if in the future, right, in late 2023, sometime in 2024, if the market is pricing in Fed rate cuts, then I think that this can actually bring tailwinds for DeFi, because if the risk-free rate is at 3.5% instead of 4.5%, I think DeFi rates start to become more competitive, and that can actually bring in more capital flows, right? Incremental flows. Of course, you can argue that the Fed is going to cut rates because of a recession, and then if people don't have money, then like who's going to buy altcoins? I mean, yeah, sure, but I'm more thinking about, hey, like if people want to yield on chain, people like want to outperform inflation. Like, why not put cash into GLP? Why not put cash into crypto? Like, why not farm stablecoins on chain? Of course, I'm not making a case for like altcoin, Dogecoin, Dogcoin euphoria. I'm more making a case for like what can actually bring more TVL on chain. And we're talking about incremental capital flows there. And I'm more approaching DeFi as like a maturing asset class, right? As like a maturing sector. And I think the risk-free rate going down, right? That being priced in is going to be good for crypto. And I think the markets can look past that. And sure, there's short-term price action, short-term volatility and whatnot. But ultimately, I think we're all into crypto for the longer term, and I think this can be tailwinds. Maybe that's hopium, right? I'm like a DeFi maxi, obviously, but you kind of have to think about these things. And talking about ETHBTC, with the Shanghai upgrade happening on April 12th, we're kind of seeing the ETHBTC ratio going down, and some people are calling for like ETHBTC to break down, hit like 0.04, 0.03. But I don't really expect that to happen, to be honest. I guess like the bear case for ETHBTC is BTC decoupling from risk assets and trading in line with gold. I think that's gonna be really, really bullish, and that can be like a tailwind that can push Bitcoin dominance higher into the halving. And then maybe like if Ether and altcoins trade in line with the NASDAQ, then maybe that can not be a great thing for Ether, especially if Bitcoin's outperforming stocks, for example. I'm not making a prediction, right, for gold versus the S&P or the NASDAQ, but for the altcoin market, I think Ether and Lido is a good barometer. Because Lido is the coin that led us out of the bear market, and if Lido is underperforming, then maybe the altcoin appetite is going to be much weaker. I shared this before. This is very low conviction for me. This is very low conviction for me, but I talk about this, right, where Lido tends to like have these crazy pumps before entering a distribution phase, and I mean, maybe you can kind of like view it as like this, right, and maybe like it's starting to distribute against Ether. I mean, I'm pretty bullish Lido, to be honest, and FXS, even though I sold, right? I mean, so I actually might rotate my Arbitrum into some LSD tokens, especially because LDO is kind of going down. But I guess this is like one risk to the altcoin market, right? If Lido is like nuking, then I think confidence in the altcoin sector is going to be lower. If Ether is underperforming into Shanghai, that can also be not good for the altcoin sector. But also, right, I think, anyone comparing 2023 with 2018, 2019, doesn't really make any sense, because back in 2018, 2019, like all these teams raised Ether with the ICO mania, and then they were forced sellers, right? They were like literally selling Ether into the bear market. But now the Ether supply schedule is much favorable, and there's a DeFi and NFT ecosystem, right, on chain. So I think Ether has matured significantly. So I don't think you can like compare the price action now to like that of 4 years ago. But that can definitely be a narrative. I can definitely see Ether setting up for like a solid rumor by the news type event in mid-April. I can kind of see ETHBTC being bearish for Q2 because the ETH unlocks, the ETH withdrawals, it's not going to be like a April thing. It's going to be like a multi-month thing, and maybe it's going to be like a supply overhang, headwind for ETHBTC. But I think if ETHBTC gets like 0.05, there's going to be buyers, and I'm definitely going to buy Ether at that point. However, right, I'm a former BTC maxi turned ETH maxi / DeFi maxi, but I still think that every crypto portfolio should have some Bitcoin exposure, because there is a non-zero chance that Bitcoin dominance goes on a crazy run, and that's kind of like why I've held Tri Crypto. I think Tri Crypto is like an ETH maxi's way of hedging against Bitcoin dominance. It's a way to earn like 15% yield on Tri Crypto while having the 33% Ether, 33% Bitcoin, and 33% cash. I can kind of see this happen, but I don't really see ETHBTC breaking down too much. And if we get to like 0.05, I'm going to be converting my Tri Crypto into Ether, to be honest. And I think in 1 to 2 years, if we do some hindsight analysis, the Shanghai FUD unlock, it might be viewed as like the most obvious buy, right? The most obvious local bottom in history. But in the short term, there's always going to be FUD. Obviously, it's going to introduce more supply, but I have a hard time believing that like 12 months from now, ETHBTC is probably going to be higher than 0.0636, to be honest. And looking at Bitcoin dominance, I've had this box for a while now, and I really don't see that much upside in BTC dominance above like 55%. Of course, like Bitcoin, the Bitcoin narrative is very strong right now, but like I mentioned earlier, I think the crypto asset class is way too mature for flows to not permeate into Ether and altcoins. If Bitcoin dominance gets like 55%, like people will naturally take profits into Ether and rotate into altcoins. It's going to be like if it does happen, it might be a tough process if you're like a full altcoin maxi. But I think even if you don't hold any Bitcoin, you should welcome this development of Bitcoin just like decoupling and trading in line with gold. I think that's a very, very good sign for like the longer term, even if it doesn't mean like maximum altcoin profits in the next 1 to 2 months, for example. And I can definitely see like this is like the Bitcoin dominance plus ETH dominance. Maybe you can get to 69%. I actually have this chart that I want to share with you. Let's try to find it. Is it this? Hold up, let's kind of zoom out. Yeah, so there's this chart. Okay, so this is, if you look at the top left, this is total 3 minus the USDC minus USDT divided by the market cap of Ether. Okay, so this is, so total 3 is, the definition is, sorry, it's not this. The definition is the crypto total market cap excluding Bitcoin and Ether. So it's basically the altcoin market, okay? Plus stablecoins. And then I went through the trouble of taking out USDC and USDT market cap because they are the 2 largest stablecoins. It contains like DAI and LU. I mean, it contains like these smaller stablecoins, but basically it's mostly the altcoin market. So I isolated for the altcoin market, the market cap of it, and then I divided it by the market cap of Ether. Okay, so this is the alt ETH ratio in terms of market cap, and you can kind of see that it's generally this like downward slope trend line, which just means that it's just like really, really, really hard to outperform Ether in the longer term. So of course I own altcoins, right? I mean, GMX Pseudo, etc. And there's always gonna be like massive gains to be had if you pick the right altcoins. But sometimes it's humbling to just look at this and say, hey, sometimes like buying Ether, staking it might be the best thing. Might be the best financial decision for me, right? So I thought this was like a pretty interesting chart. I think it's like worth your attention. And also, I guess, like for me, how many times in the last 12 months have you thought to yourself, damn, I wish I would have sat more capital into Try Crypto and GLP? I felt this way so many times, and I think, Try Crypto and GLP, just having money on there is like a way to hedge against your own stupidity, right? At least for me, because on Arbitrum, right, you can be paid 20-30% LPing in a Try Crypto. I think that's pretty good. On Polygon, there's also this pool. It's Matic, so it's 50% Matic, and then 50% Try Crypto. So like very little stable coins. It's paying like 35%. I thought it's a pretty interesting farm. I get requests like, hey, like Taiki, like, can you shitcoin more? Can you degen farm more? But I kind of laid out my reasons on like why I don't think this is like the best time to like go full on degen when like USDC confidence is like like not that great. So I still think it's if you're farming Try Crypto GLP majors, I still think it's like the best way to do so. And if you're like farming shitcoins, like like don't allocate too much, okay? Because you really should respect anyone that's left on chain, okay? Like if people are trading on chain despite the USDC FUD, the Depeg, then all these people are battle hardened veterans. They know what they're doing, and it's going to be very, very hard to outcompete the average on-chain participant in these PvP trading battles. And actually, hold up, let me connect my wallet to. Okay, so GLP on Avalanche is paying 32%. That's always great. And then on Arbitrum, it's paying, how much is it? 21%. Okay, so obviously I'd rather farm Ether over Avalanche, but I just want to give my thoughts on why I think it's worth farming AVAX. I've talked about AVAX as like the token I love to short most. I love hedging downside by shorting Avalanche, but I think leading into the Avalanche Summit on May, maybe it's not worth shorting Avalanche. Maybe it's worth farming it. So there was a summit in 2022, March 22 to the 27th, and if you look at the Avalanche price action, of course it was basically down only, but leading into the summit, it kind of pumped, and even after the summit, it also pumped. This also did coincide with like the Luna Foundation Guard buying Bitcoin, so maybe there's like some noise there. But I think it's reasonable to expect Avalanche to outperform into the summit, and the summit's happening May 3rd to May 5th. So I have a bunch of Avalanche GLP. I'm farming AVAX. It kind of was a nothing burger, to be honest, but I think Ava Labs, they're gonna save a bunch of bullets, right? Like bullish announcements into the summit. I think the market is gonna expect that, so I'm gonna continue to farm AVAX, okay? And I'm not short. I was actually short AVAX into the USDC Depeg, and I made like a little bit of money, but it was not a fun experience because I borrowed AVAX on Aave, bought GLP with it, and Avalanche went down, so I made money, but also GLP contained USDC, and I was like not feeling that well. So that was like a little, I guess, fun experience. But I still think GLP is like a really good way to farm, to be honest. Like I said, holding GLP, Try Crypto, for me, is a way for me to hedge against my own stupidity. I bought some altcoin. Like I was like shitcoining once on like some random chain, and like it went down like 50%, and I was like, oh my god, like, what am I doing? I should have held GLP and Try Crypto. So I think that's the end of the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to check out the premium Discord. Link is in the description below. Let me know what you're doing with your Arbitrum token airdrop. I think anything above $2, decent sell. And yeah, we'll see what happens with FOMC. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys in the Discord. See you guys later. I'll try to make more videos. Hopefully my interns can help me with that. And bye bye. Hope you have a good day and have fun farming out there.